My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. I'm only here to even a score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
What is up, Night Nation? I am Ben Stout. I hope everyone has had a wonderful holiday season, and I thank you all for joining us tonight. We are coming to you live with a special edition of the Nighted One podcast, where we are going to talk exclusively tonight about UCF men's basketball as we head into conference play on Tuesday, New Year's Eve day, with a game on the road versus Texas Tech. We're going to chat about how we're feeling about this season now that we've gone through the non-conference slate and we're gearing up to face the gauntlet that is the Big 12 Conference. Joining me tonight to help break it all down is your esteemed host and creator of the Nightline podcast series, who will be producing the show tonight, Mr. Night Bengal himself, Roger Phipps.
What up, Ben? Good job. That intro was good. So that was the second intro you've done for the Nighted Ones.
That's right. The
So
first one was this season when I was so excited about the Texas A&M win. I had to do it a little bit more professional tonight.
So which one's harder, ESPN or this?
Oh, this one. Nah, I'd say ESPN. Luckily, I don't have to do the intro then because I'm the color commentator guy. So,
well, I'm excited to see what you and Chance come up with. Two of the former UCF basketball stars. I never made it D1, but I did play a little semi-pro. So I'll let you guys cook.
Yeah, I'm excited for you producing tonight. Roger's going to handle any comments coming through in the chat or any questions that you have for our guest and I. And speaking of our guest, as Roger mentioned, we have a very special guest tonight for the program, someone who is really tuned in to all UCF sports, particularly basketball. It's former UCF guard Chance McSpadden.
What's going on, everybody? What's going on?
How you doing, man? Good to have you.
Pretty good, man. Pleasure to be here on this day after Christmas.
Absolutely. How was your holiday season, buddy?
It was great, man. Just spent some time with some family. Got some gifts, some interesting gifts. So I like a lot. Just had my first son 2 weeks ago. So.
Oh wow! Congratulations. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. Appreciate
Are you getting
it.
to spend time at home or no?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've been home just soaking it all in. Obviously, when you have your first son, you definitely gotta soak that in. I was super happy to know I had a son coming. So,
yeah. Well, I'll tell you, one day they turn 18 and you look like this. So I'm just letting you know it's all downhill from here for us. But enjoy it while you can.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I've got 3 kids myself. My oldest is my son, who's 11. I got 2 daughters as well, 9 and 7. So we're a busy household, man. I always say that the kids get cooler and cooler with age. So you're in for a great adventure, and I'm excited for you, man. Congratulations.
Appreciate that, man. Appreciate it.
Well, as I said before, we are live tonight, guys. So, feel free to check in the comments section on our YouTube channel. Please interact with us as we talk about this basketball season so far, and looking forward to the Big 12 conference play. That's why we're doing the show tonight, guys. We're doing the show for you all. We're looking forward to the Big 12 gauntlet, if you will, and Chance and I are here to break it all down for you guys. So let us know in the comments if you have anything for us, and we'll be sure to address it. And Roger will put it up on the screen as well. But yeah, guys, we can just get right into it. All right. So here we are. We're in late December. It's that time for UCF basketball to join the conference play of the Big 12 for our second Big 12 season. And so some general things on the night season so far. We're started out with a 9-2 record. We've had some great games along the way. I think our best win of the season came game 1 in Texas A&M, beating Texas A&M, who is proved to be a really good team going into the season and throughout their non-conference play in the entire SEC. Actually, their entire SEC's basketball play has been phenomenal, but Texas A&M has been no different, and I think that was one of our best wins, if not our best win of the season so far, is our first one against Texas A&M at home. But we have, and we're going to talk a little bit, or I'm going to reference a lot tonight, the net rankings, and all that is simply a way to judge the entire country as far as the net, as far as ranking every single team in the country. It is a marker that is used by the NCAA selection committee to decide some of the teams in the at-large bids that are coming once March comes rolling around. So I'm going to be referencing those rankings a lot tonight. And right now, as UCF stands going into conference play, we have a net ranking of 81, which is okay. But I think that takes into account a lot of who we've played and how we've played in the first 11 games of the season. And so that is 14th out of the 16 Big 12 teams as far as the net rankings go. But what it also does with these rankings it divides up the country into 4 quads, if you will. And the top quad, it takes into account the, playing them at home or playing them away. And we are 1-1 in quad 1 games, the Texas A&M being the biggest win of the season. We are 0-1 in quad 2 games, which was actually that one loss against LSU where we were up by 20 points in the second half and wound up losing in triple overtime in that neutral site game. That was the toughest loss to take of the season of our 2 losses that we've had so far. We went up to West Virginia for the Greenbrier tournament and wound up losing both of those games. First one to a really good Wisconsin team where we were just never quite had it that night. But the second day of that tournament, the second game of that tournament against LSU, we were in command in the second half and just wound up kind of chipping away at it. LSU did. And we didn't quite work out that game. That was probably our one loss where we really, really wanted to get that one back this year. But the good news is we've got a ton of chances to improve ourselves once we face these tough Big 12 opponents. Night in and night out is going to be really tough. So there's a few other things that we could talk about during as far as the season goes that we've got a lot of newcomers to this team. 11 out of our 16 players on the roster are new to UCF. Essentially, 11 out of about 13 players who have gotten any type of playing time so far are new to UCF. And we've been without one key player in particular from last year's team in Jalen Sellers. He just came back last game, our last game of conference play. Also with a newcomer that we've been excited to see in Mikey Williams, also came back kind of in garbage time in that game. Who knows exactly what his role is going to be on this team so far, but we've got 2 key players coming back that we'll have to check out this season. But that's a little bit of kind of general notes on the season so far, Chance, but I'd like to get your thoughts since you and I haven't really talked too much about what's going on with UCF this season. What's your kind of general thoughts on the year so far in the non-conference slate?
Yeah, so I mean, you have the record of 9-2, the net ranking of 81. Obviously, I think if we win the game against LSU, I do think we would probably be sitting maybe 50-ish range,
Yeah, I'd agree with
probably
that.
40, 50 in that range, something like that, because we were supposed to win that game. I believe we were up 20, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching that game live. I couldn't believe that we ended up losing that game. It was kind of ridiculous, but anyways, we move on. I mean, 9-2 record going to start conference play. One thing I do want to kind of harp on is Sellers coming back into the lineup. I'm not sure how that's going to mess with the team's chemistry. With a guy like that coming back in, especially with the amount of guys they have on the roster already, that's pretty good. You got Ivy Curry. He can put the ball in the hole.
Right.
That Keyshawn Hall, he can score. Obviously, Darius, he's been on the team. How does Coach Dawkins implement those guys going into conference play? Obviously, some guys' minutes are going to take a hit. So was the best player on the team last year. Kind of hard to argue that he wasn't. So with him coming in right when conference play starts, it can either go two ways. It can go really good, guys buy in and say, hey, my minutes are going to go down. It is what it is, but I'm sacrificing a win. Or guys can say, hey, I'm not feeling this. I lost minutes, and it can go. Yeah, both of you guys know it can get really bad in the locker room if guys start feeling like their ego is hit. So, but I am really excited to see how they play together. Obviously, we've got a couple tough home games coming up as well as road games. I'll probably be at the Kansas one, so yeah, I'm excited about that one. But
you and everyone else trying to get into that game, that's for sure. Everybody wants to see that rematch from last season.
For sure. And then Mikey Williams, I don't have too much to say because I just haven't seen anything to be able to give an opinion about him. But for the 2-3 minutes he did get in the game, he made two pretty elite level passes that I seen. A lot of people probably didn't pay attention to that. But it seems like when he got in the game, he did good with his minutes. I believe he had one good assist, maybe. But he was only in the game
it was that high ball screen pick and roll pass that he made to Josias.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Chance. That was an elite pass. And one of the things on Mikey that I wasn't too sure, I'm still a little bit unsure of in that game, the 2-3 garbage time minutes that you can't judge based on this, right? But I don't know about you. Maybe it's just me because I was a player that only played at garbage time. I wasn't like you that you shined for UCF, and that's great. But yeah, I didn't love his body language. I'll say that. Like I didn't love his body language going into the game. Once he seemed to get a little bit into it, after he had been in the game for a full possession or two. He had that turnover he just kind of like didn't catch the pass, on his second possession there. But I didn't love his body language. But then again, he's a kid that's been like at the highest level of basketball, in high school, and has a lot of hype around him, has a lot of obviously Instagram followers or whatever. He's got a lot of attention around him, and he's used to that since he's been 14 years old, right? So he had never been in that. I'm going to give him a little bit of pass because he had never been in a situation where the first time he's checking into a game is 2 minutes left and a 30-point blowout,
Well, I mean, Ben, too, just kind of add on your point about what he looked like. When you looked at his face, it was almost like he was lost a little bit. I don't know if he was like, and it may be just, Mikey Williams is famous. I mean, let's be real. He's IG famous. He's well known. There's a lot of expectations on him, but this was his first game in the NCAA. So it was a little bit of a big moment for him. I don't know if it was a, hey, is this really happening kind of moment, or a what do I do kind of moment, or whatever. But you're right. He just looked like he was just lost there for a minute, and then when he got into
nerves got the best of him, man. You got to think like people are expecting a lot in those like 2-3 minutes of garbage time from him, right? So, it took him a few possessions to get a little more comfortable, and his face never really changed, which I'm okay with. It just seemed a little bit off, but I didn't love his body language, like I said. But like I said, like you said, Chance, I mean, when he came off that play, when he it was a called play. It was something they were supposed to run. And he came off that ball screen off the top of the key, and he saw the roll man perfectly, and he dropped the dime to him. So, I mean, at least you saw that, that flash of an elite level play, like you said.
Yeah, and for UCF Knight for Life 09, we had his message up on here, just to give my 2 cents on it. like we talked about on our previous show on Monday that just dropped, you know, both Mikey Williams and Sellers, and more so, I think, with Sellers than Mikey Williams. Sellers is going to have to get his legs underneath him again, right? So game minutes are different. And he just came off the back injury like 2 weeks ago. They didn't even know. And he even said he didn't know if he was going to actually play, right, for the rest of the season. So he's not in game shape. Now, is he an amazing player? Yeah, he got on the court and look what he did, right? Like he came in, he was fluid. He looked like he was part of the offense. There was a few miscommunications you could see, but you know, he absolutely looked like he belonged on the court. And he also looked winded after the first few minutes, right? So I don't think people realize like how big of a difference it is for you. You can't just go up and down a basketball court coming off an injury if you can't do that. So you know, he's gonna have his minutes fed to him. The one thing that Johnny does really well, and he does it often, is he plays with his lineups, right? So situational basketball, you know, giving yourself the ability to play small ball or go bigger or mix and match defenses. Some people are better defensively. Like that's a big reason why Coleman's in there. He's not going to go for 20 points every single game, right? But he does provide you that defensive edge, and he doesn't produce turnovers, right? So that's really why he's in there until Sellers gets back. So I think you're going to continue to see what we're going to see. I think Mikey, he's going to have to work his way into it. We don't know. One, he's coming off an injury, and two, we don't know what we saw in practice. And three, he's a true freshman. I mean, this kid hasn't played since high school, right? That's a long time he sat. So it's going to take him a moment to get in rhythm with the team, make sure he's got his body right, and then make sure that he's getting the confidence, right? Because I don't care what anybody tells you. I was a pretty good guard in my own right. I was playing when I was 15 years old and semi-pro basketball, right? But when you're staring down someone the size of Ben or Chance, you know, when they're on the other end of the court with you, stuff gets real. Since we're a clean show and we're eat for everyone, stuff gets real quick when you're looking at someone like that, right? So it's going to take him a minute to get back into the rhythm, and again, he's coming off of it too. But I think Sellers is such an important piece, and the fact that he produced when he was on the court with the minutes that he was given shows you that Johnny, he likes to mix and match his lineups. He's been prepping all season for this, especially when it comes to different opposing offenses that we've played against and different styles. So one, we're built for this, and two, Sellers is going to sprinkle that in as he feels better and he gets his win back.
Yeah, one thing I did notice what Johnny said in the interview. I think the post game of the last game. Obviously they're going to ask him about Sellers and how they plan on putting him into the lineup. He kind of kept it in general. He tends to do that a lot when he doesn't want to throw too much, because he doesn't want to tell the other teams in the conference, hey, I'm going to, implement them right away. He doesn't want to tell them that. But I do think Sellers will. I don't think he'll start next game. I don't think he'll start, but I think he'll probably be 25 minutes next game. I think he'll get about 25. And I guarantee you in practice, they're probably scrimmaging a lot just to get his win up. They're probably going 5-on-5, score up there, and saying, hey, let's get ready for conference. So they're probably going hard, scrimmaging, so that guys like Mikey and Sellers can, get back in the groove. And so when they get in the game, because last game, Sellers, I think he was in about 4 minutes and he pulled his shirt. Coach, get me out. So I was like, I don't blame him. I mean, this is his first time playing since the preseason, so I wasn't surprised when he did that. You guys talked a little bit about Mikey's body language. That's one thing I did notice that too, because I was at the game last game. Mm-hmm. On the bench, I noticed to me is how he presents himself on the bench, in my opinion. Yes. It's like he's like sitting, he's like with his arm, I think he had his like legs crossed. Didn't seem animated when his team like did well. But it can be an ego hit when you're a guy coming in that highly touted, because you got to remember he was a 5-star coming out of high school.
Yeah.
And then for him to get in the game with some of the walk-ons, that's a big ego hit for a guy like that. But I do think he'll bounce back. I don't think he's a cancerous guy. I don't really know him, so I'm not gonna say that.
Right.
But it can be a big ego hit to a guy like that to come in a game on garbage minutes and be expected to give the crowd something special. It's just not gonna happen in
It's
2 to 3 minutes.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, Chance, because I wasn't at the game, but I definitely noticed the same thing you do. And whenever they cut to the bench on on camera, and the interesting thing about that is whenever they cut to Jalen Sellers on the bench, it was the exact opposite. Now, granted, we're talking about two players that are in a totally different situation, right? Jalen Sellers was our leading scorer on our team last year. Like he was the man on our team last year. Like he knows that all he has to do is get back. I mean, I don't want to say all he has to do, but he has to get back into shape and he's going to get his minutes. Like in Johnny, because Johnny Dawkins knows him, like as far as knows him on the court playing for him. And so I think but that being said, Jalen, in that moment, you always have a choice, right? Like you have a choice, like when you're on the bench, it doesn't matter what your situation you're in. You can choose to be, a rah-rah guy on the bench. You can choose to be in the game, engaged in a game, even though you're on the bench. And Jalen Sellers was that when he was on the, and whenever they cut to him on the bench, you always see Jalen just like, hyping up his teammates and he's into the game. And, he's getting himself mentally ready to get back into that game, as well as the physical nature of him getting back into the game. So you're right. That's been a difference. And so, I just think it's an interesting thing of how Johnny Dawkins is going to like implement him into the starting lineup, because we know it's coming, and how he's going to implement him into the, starters minutes of the game as the conference play goes on, as these first 4 or 5 games in conference goes on. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, but it's not like we get a chance to ease into this conference. Like Texas Tech is no joke, and that's just the first game of conference, let alone the ones coming after that. So we don't get a chance to necessarily ease into it. That being said, I feel like Jalen Sellers is going to continue to get his wind about him. And as soon as that happens, that conditioning, that basketball shape, starts to raise its level with him, he's going to get those starters minutes. Now, how, where are those minutes going to become a sacrifice in it? I think we can break that down in a little bit, but I mean, I just off the top of my head, I see certain players like Dior Johnson and Nils Machowski who are getting about 8 minutes a game right now.
I don't know if Dior keeps hitting those threes like he's hitting, he might be staying in there.
He started to prove himself to be a scorer. I actually think personally, with the versatility of some of the guys on this roster, like Keyshawn Hall, his ability to play a lot of different positions, including even the 4 in some lineups, in my opinion, I see him sliding over 4, and somebody like who we just talked about. And I'm not saying that that he deserves a sacrifice on this, but somebody like Debo Coleman, and some others, their minutes going down just a little bit because we got to implement Jalen in the lineup. But it might depend on matchups too. So.
Yeah, I think a big part of that too will be matchups and what we're playing, right? So if we're playing small ball or not, right? A lot of those guys are going to get more run because there are some small ball teams that are out there too. Like Houston is kind of set up like we are right now, etc. So I think a big part of that is going to be who we're playing. But I think no matter what, Sellers is going to get his. And the difference between Mikey Williams and Sellers right now is Sellers has been there, done that. He's been successful. He led the Big 12 in scoring last year. He's got the confidence, and he's a team leader. So he's going to be vocal. Mikey Williams, on the other hand, hasn't played since high school. He's got big expectations on his shoulder. It was the first time on the court and in NCAA play, and it looked like it. when it came to his body language. And that's going to change, but he's got a long way to go because he's not the only 5-star or former 5-star on the court right now for the UCF basketball team. That's
true.
the crazy thing, right? Like all these guys are 4 stars and 5 stars.
Yeah, which is a great problem to have. And you put UCF Knight for life, his question up there about the slow starts. I think that's a good topic for us to talk about as we're, continuing to talk about how we've played so far this season. That has been one of the things that I think is a bit of a concern of the things that we've seen in the non-conference, or seen from us so far this season. And one of those things, of course, is the slow starts. And I think my thoughts on the matter, and I want to hear what you guys think as well. My thoughts on the matter is that what I'd like to see more of to start out a game for UCF is not settling for jump shots early, like attacking the basket from the opening possession. And at the very least, if we're going to get a jump shot, it's going to be from a kick out after a hard drive to the basket. Like, I'd like to see guys like Darius Johnson, especially getting downhill early, somebody who's been an excellent three-point shooter this year. And so I've got no problem with Darius shooting the ball. I just don't want our first 5 possessions to be all 5 players shooting some shot from 18 feet out. And that's what we see sometimes in these slow starts or slow periods in the game where we let the other team go on a run, or we just go on a long run where we're not scoring in the game. So attacking the basket early, I think, is going to be very important once we get into the non-conference to kind of set the tone. And I also felt like ever since Johnny Dawkins has been here, it doesn't matter if you go back to the BJ and Taco days, you go to some of the teams since then. Johnny Dawkins' defense, his team's defense, always seems to get more energized when we are having fluid offensive sets. And so I think that if we can become more attacking on the offensive end early in the game, I think that'll just fuel everything, even on the defensive end as well. So what do you think about that, Chance?
Well, to go off of UCF Night for Life 09's comment, so I go to the game with one of my guys, and that's one thing we always talk about when we go to the games. Is like, it seems like every game this season is that they're down at least 7 to 10 points off the rip. Like every game, crazy. I think last game was a little different, but every game I went to and watched on TV, it's like they take time to wake up. Like, all right, we're at a game tonight. All right, let's play now. But it takes them like 3 or 4 minutes to realize, hey, what are we doing? And I sent out a tweet about 2 weeks ago, and I talked about those slow starts going into conference play. When you talk about a conference like the Big 12, there's no way you can start off the game 12-0, 10-2, scores like that with a team like Kansas, teams like Texas Tech, because those teams are going to shut you out early. They're going to take that as hey, these guys can't play with us, and they're going to put their foot on the throttle. So if they keep having starts like this, it will be scary for them going into big, especially on the road, because you got a lot of teams that people don't talk about is Kansas State. Their environment is crazy, and then when that crowd gets behind them, and you're down 12-2, good luck.
It's something we haven't mentioned yet, right? I mean, that we have not had a true road game yet this entire season. No. And so our first true road game is going to be our first conference game at Texas Tech on New Year's Eve. So you're right. I mean, we've had slow starts, but all of them, with the exception of that game against Wisconsin, which was a neutral site game, all of them we've been able to survive because we were at home, and our home crowd might be standing up still because they're waiting to sit down for that first bucket. But by the same token, it's been at home, right? It's a forgiving crowd. And as soon as we do go on that run, which we luckily have in all of our games that we've won, all of our games at home this season, once we do go on that run, the crowd gets into it, and it's a home court advantage, and we get all that. But you're absolutely right, Chance. I mean, the fact that we haven't been on the road yet this season,
it scares me.
It shows you that if we have those slow starts in conference, man. If we have those slow starts in conference at a conference opponent's arena, it'll be difficult to recover from.
Yeah, I think from my seat, look, there's a couple things going on. One, our offense this season is not half court offense. What we used to run is a smothering defense and a half court offense to drain the clock. And then we ended up shooting a three. When it wasn't working, we ended up shooting a three. We didn't have very much slashing. We didn't have very much movement. Everybody was on the perimeter. And then we had one big in the center, whether it be Taco or anybody else. That's kind of what we were running. And now, with the new offensive coach that we brought in this year that was highly focused on offense, it's switched up a little bit, right? And so we thrive and we get in our groove when we're not in a half court set. We want to get steals, we want to get turnovers, and we want to score in transition. And that's really what Johnny Dawkins wants to do now. The way that is enabled, though, is if you get that transition offensive score, then that sets up your press. And so we're playing a lot of press. We're playing different variations of the press. We're playing man. We're switching to zone. We're doing a lot of different things on defense to confuse people. But that defense is causing our offense because we're getting a lot of points off of turnovers. It allows us to get out. It allows us to speed up the game and to run, which is the exact opposite of what we were doing before, right? But it allows us to really use those 4 stars and 5 stars that are great offensive threats, which we have a lot more offensive threats this year than what we've had in years past. In the past, it was always more about, hey, we've got 1 or 2 guys that we want we've got DJ who's got the ball in his hands, or we've got, Sellers who's got the ball in his hands, right? Or Taylor, when he was here, so that's what we were. This year, it's more about that. The problem with that is before we get into that defensive mindset and we really start clogging up the lanes, our sets have been shoot a perimeter 3. And Johnny tells them, and this, Chance, too. Johnny tells them, hey, shoot your way out of a slump, right? You got the green light to shoot. If you're a decent shooter, I'm going to let you shoot, right? But when you go 0 for 9, at the beginning of the game, we can't do that, right? And other teams will get hot. Now, this last game you mentioned, we shot 52%. We shot 57% from 3. We're not going to shoot 57% from 3. So we've got to set up that slashing, and we've seen things like pick and rolls this year, which we haven't seen since like Taco Fall days. We tried to do that back then a little bit. We haven't seen that in a really, really long time. But now we've got a lot more variety in our offense. We're making the extra passes. We got guys slashing. We got movement. I saw DJ last couple games. He's like, he was standing around, and Coach Dawkins got after him. He was like, hey, you got to move. And so guess what? When he started moving, when he started slashing the paint, that allowed us to get rebounds. And when we got rebounds, then we were able to take advantage of that, right? And not have like one possession where an inferior team has 6 straight attempts because we can't rebound, right? Like for me, it's like, bro, why are people not boxing out? Why are people not following their shots? Why are people not doing that? It seems like once they get that in gear, like once they figure that out, it takes them a few possessions to figure that out. Then they start getting that attacking mentality with the other types of offensive sets that we have. Then you start seeing, a few points going, and then we start really getting into that defense. But for us, defense sparks our offense because it gives us easier shots, and we don't want to play a half court game. And you're right, Chance, you can't do that in the Big 12.
No, I got a question though. It's a lineup question. You guys think the offense, well, kind of both, offense and defense flows better with Benny Williams or Mustafa? I got my opinion. I want to hear you guys' opinion. But just for me, watching the game, I have my opinion on who I feel like it's the game flows better with. But I want to hear you guys' opinion on who you think, Benny or Mustafa when it comes to, fluidity, like the fluidness of the game.
So I don't know. So Benny Williams is so athletic that I don't know if you necessarily have to choose between those two, because those two can coexist in the same lineup. But I understand the premise of your question. I'm always going to be an advocate for Mustafa just because I see him as just an exponentially high ceiling. Like, he's a future lottery pick, in my opinion. He is an unbelievably talented player that is only going to get better and better as he plays more high-level college basketball. Now, obviously, he's supposed to be a senior right now this year, right? Like, he reclassified. And so to answer your question, it's hard to answer your question for me because you asked from an offensive standpoint, right?
Well, offense, like a little bit offense defense. So let's say, because I know a lot of times Dawkins puts Benny in as the center.
Yeah, he does.
And so
and the only reason why I hesitate on answering it from an offensive standpoint only is because he's still a little bit raw on the offensive end. I actually think he's got some pretty good touch around the basket, and his mid-range jumper is pretty good. I'm talking about Mustafa. But I think, to me, defensively, he just brings this team to another level because they can switch all 5 positions when he's in the game. He's an elite level defender. I think he can guard so many different players on the court, and he's such a menace as a shot blocker that I just feel like lineup wise, he's going to command more minutes because of what he can do as a shot blocker on this team. But and again, I don't even know what your answer. You haven't said what your answer is yet. But I feel like even offensively, with some of the high ball screen pick and roll action that he can do, he's a little bit raw on the offensive end. A little bit might be generous. He's got a long way to go as far as the feel for where he should be on the court at all times. But once he gets the ball in his hands, he makes pretty good decisions. So just overall, I just think Mustafa is a guy that's got to be in the lineup even more if he can be. But foul trouble has also been something that he's run into this season.
Yeah.
I think for me, like the biggest problem that Johnny Dawkins is running into right now, no matter what his thought process is for lineup, is Josiah is just not there. There's a big drop off. You've got Mustafa, and then you've got Benny, and then you got a drop off. And I think, when you want to play a little more up and down basketball, for me, as far as what the flow is, the speed of the game works better with Benny Williams. He can, he was a lot like CJ Walker, except for the fact that he's more fluid with the basketball. He's, CJ, he was hurt so much, it was hard, but he was tall and he was as athletic as Benny Williams, but Benny Williams has just got better handles. He's got better handles, and he'll get in there and do those things. Whereas, Mustafa, the good thing about him is I look at him and I look at Taco Fall, right? I remember when Taco first started. Taco had a rough time. And granted, now Taco's was taller, right? Had a rough time getting up and down the court or even, I don't know if you guys remember McBride, right? When McBride was getting up and down the court, right? Like he was a shot blocker, right? Like he could get it, but he couldn't get it very long. So it was kind of the same thing with Taco Fall. With Mustafa Thiam, he moves pretty fluidly. He's pretty quick. He can move up and down the court. But I think what he gives you is he has that ability to block. I mean, this guy's averaging, I think, 3 to 4 shots blocked per game. I think that's important. I think, he's put 20 pounds of weight on already, which is something that is important. As far as fluidity of the offense, though, Benny Williams 100%. But I think it's a bigger question of that. And no matter what your preference is, you've got to have Mustafa in there, especially when you're talking about guys like when you're playing Kansas and you've got those dominant centers or BYU or whatever. I think the big thing for him is learning, getting better at boxing out, which is what he's doing in position basketball, right? and he is a little light for that, so he has to get lower. And then the other thing with him is he'll come out on those screens, but he won't recover fast enough. And some of the other guys will have to collapse on defense, and that leaves open the 3-point line. So you saw a lot of teams taking advantage of that too. So he is a little bit of a liability, but he's getting way better. I mean, I've seen his learning curve is like astronomical. But I don't think it's a choice that you have. I think you kind of have to plug the middle with him to start. And then you spell him with Benny Williams, especially when you want to move up and down the court, especially if you're playing from behind. And since we're playing from behind, you're going to have more of an offensive focus, and that's Benny Williams' game.
Yeah, so I'm an advocate for Benny Williams for sure. Just off of what I've seen, I think defensive. So Benny, to me, he's more filled out. One thing I saw with the Texas A&M game, they had a really strong big, and Mustafa really struggled because that big would dip his shoulder down, and even though Mustafa is 7'1", 7'2", he gets hit in the chest, he backs up, and then that leaves the quick leg.
That was like a welcome to the D1 basketball moment for Mustafa there, right?
Yeah, for sure. He was getting his chest was getting blasted the whole game.
Yeah.
But when they put Benny Williams in the game, I noticed that he did a very, very good job of containing the other big because he's more filled out. I think if you have a big that's more on the stronger side, I like Benny better in the game. I think if it just comes to height, you have another big on another team that's just tall, Mustafa. But I also think on the offensive end, right, Benny, to me, has shown that mid-range jumper is very reliable, extremely reliable. Obviously, he's not going to have the the little hooks that Mustafa has, but I just think Benny just seems a lot more confident in what he does. Like he knows what he's going to do, and I think that's important going into conference play. And I think he can run the floor really good with the guards that we have. Like Ivy Curry, they push the ball up. Darius pushed the ball up. Even Sellers does the same thing too as well. And I think he matches their pace like really good.
Oh, and you got Taylor too. I mean, Taylor will do the same thing, right?
Right. But yeah, I mean, that was just a question I had. Have conversations with about it at the game with some of my guys I go to the game with, and we're always going back and forth. I'm like, man, I don't know, man. I like Benny. They're like, nah, man, Mustafa. Like, I don't know, man. I like when Benny's in the game. I don't know. It's just.
I know what you mean though, Chance, because what I like about him though, and it maybe it just speaks to the role that he has on this team, and it's not a knock on him. It's I think him accepting what he does best and what he does best with this team, with this roster, with what they're trying to do is I do like his role coming off the bench because of all those things that you just mentioned. Like he has poise, but to me, his number one asset is the energy that he brings to the game as soon as he comes in. And you need guys like that coming off the bench. I'm not saying that he couldn't start. He's proven himself. He could be a capable starter if we needed him to, if the matchup presented itself. But I feel like his role on this team coming off the bench is even more important because of the type of game and the energy that he brings to the game once he's injected into the lineup. So
like a Chad Brown 6-man kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, even exactly. I think I'll just say yes to that. Because I agree. Like he has a little bit different game than Chad Brown did, but yes, that same type of energy and flow into the game, maybe with a little bit more serious or a little more edge to him. So I do like that.
It kind of reminds me of like maybe Kenneth Fareed. I don't know. I mean,
yeah. I'm trying to think of who he reminds me of, like maybe an NBA comp, but like I was about to say Ben Wallace, but I didn't want to insult his offensive game because that's not him. But he's just hyper athletic like that, like he just gets off the floor quick. He's a physical player. He can
jump out the gym
when he needs to. Yeah, he can jump out of the gym. I mean, was that last game he had like a putback dunk or something that was just nasty. Like, I mean, he's had some great plays overall, and I do like his role on the team, and that's what Dawkins seems to be good at, especially the last couple of seasons, the first 2 seasons in the Big 12, but really as this transfer portal especially started to come into play with UCF and every other team in the country, where that's a real thing, right? Where we got to kind of reload our roster every year. One of the things that Johnny, the last 2 seasons, has proven to be pretty good at is not only find the right players, but find the right players that kind of fit the role that he wants them to. And then the buy-in, at least last season, but really what we're seeing so far this season is they get bought into those roles. That's what makes the conversation about Jalen Sellers so fascinating as we go into these next 4 or 5 games, is because we've seen such good chemistry with this team as they started out the season, and they're all basically new to the team besides obviously Darius Johnson as the main focal point as a returner. And so that makes the whole conversation fascinating. But what we've seen so far with guys like Juice Curry and some others, just Keyshawn Hall, is that they've embraced their roles that they have on the team. And I think Benny Williams and Mustafa are no different. They kind of understand what their role is, and they're excelling in that role to start. And the last thing I'll say about Rokas Josias, which I agree with you, that is a drop off from the first 2 guys we're talking about. One of the things that I think he brings is really efficient offensive scoring around the basket. He's got a very soft touch, keeps the ball high. He's an efficient scorer. The biggest problem for me with Rokas is that he is a defensive liability, in my opinion. If once we get into when we're playing against guys like Hunter Dickinson and these other teams in the Big 12 that are big and physical. I mean, a guy like KJ Abrams, for instance, like if he gets in a switching, like Rokas can't be in a switching situation like with Hunter Dickinson and like KJ, like he's going to be done. So
he's
I
slow.
think his minutes go down even more because so far he has not proven, at least to me in my observation, to be a very good defensive player. And we've got plenty of offensive players. We don't, need his offensive standpoint. So I can see his minutes being sacrificed as we go into conference play and kind of shore up our lineups.
I think he's slow. He's slow to recover. That's the biggest issue with him is like you watch his footwork, you watch his body. He doesn't have control of his body as well when, like you said, off of switches or
it's just a little more lumbering,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that you mentioned that I thought was really, really important is, the last 2 years as more of this NIL and all this stuff has kind of come into play. One of the things that you always ask, and one of the things, Ben, that we've always talked about, whether it be Nightline or whether it be the Knighted Ones or anything else, is the ability of the team to gel, right? Like how, when they're on the court, how well are they gelling together? Last year's team came together a lot more quickly than what any of us were expecting, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we were talking about last year's team, we were like, yeah, I think you had the least conservative expectation. Well, not even expectation or, a thought that they could win 4 wins. I don't remember what we said at the beginning of this. Four conference wins, right? And so they exceeded that, right? No, I'm serious. I mean, you think about what we were walking into.
Going to our first season of the Big 12, Chance, we were like, I was trying to hedge my bets. I was like, we get 4, I'll be pretty happy.
And you were the least conservative, right? So I thought, I think I said 3. But, you see that with this team this year, and then you see the different rotations. So I don't know, what I see is progress. I think Johnny, what he's done the last 2 years really, really successfully is not just have guys play within their lane, because you've got a lot of big personalities that came onto this team. You think about Benny Williams was huge at Syracuse. You You think about Keyshawn Hall, he was a feature player.
Yeah.
You think about Mikey Williams. You think about J.J. Taylor. You think about Dior. All these guys are
Johnson averaged 45 points in junior college. Like
I know, but
he's going from junior college, but you average 45 points in the playoffs in junior college. You're going to expect him to do something.
Yeah, but my point is he was a 4 or 5 star coming out of high school, right? So all these guys, big personalities, lots of confidence, blah blah blah. Mikey Williams, all these guys. He's taken these. To your point, I really want to highlight this. He's brought this specific group together, which is I think was even more challenging than last year's group.
Agreed.
Got them believing in their role.
Way more.
Yeah, got them believing in their role. Because I mean, look, you had Penny Hardaway, right? Penny, you talked about Penny Hardaway quite a bit, and how his team, he gets these guys, these 4 and 5 stars, and he just kicks them off the team, or they don't get along or whatever, right? And they're coming, those same players are now coming to this team and they're gelling together and playing within their lane. And I think the thing that Johnny does really, really well is he mixes and matches the lineups to the point where everybody's featured in different games depending on who we play. So everybody believes and knows, hey, I'm going to get minutes based on who we play. This is kind of my specialization. So I think that's what he's done really, really well. And offensively, the buckets have come from a lot of different people, right? So, we'll see how that works out in conference play. I think, the thing is, realistically, if you look at our schedule, you were talking about net rankings, right? A lot of these teams were lower net, and they're expected to be tournament teams or competing for that 1 seed for that bid in their league, right?
We played so both Horizon League finalists, or like the expected winners of the Horizon League. We played a lot of teams. You're right, that are going to be tournament teams.
Yeah, so you have that, and then you have the fact that not only that, but Johnny's picking them for that very specific reason of playing different looks. Now, UCF Night for Life again comes back. He says, Chance tweeted recently about how the transfer rules should change to help encourage student athletes to stay at school. I think that goes at football or basketball. The 2018-2019 team was tremendous talent that was built towards the season over a few years. Yes, and I'm just going to, before I let you jump in there, Chance. Yeah, but yes, and, right? I think I guess what I'm highlighting here is that Johnny, the last 2 years, has proven that he has now, more money and more leverage being in the Big 12, that he can get a higher quality of player. And he's been able to take those higher quality of players, plug them in such a way where this team has been successful. So I'd argue he's more successful with this than having to lean on the development of 1 or 2 players to do that. Chance, go ahead. I didn't mean to pull away from that, but I thought that was a really interesting comment.
Yeah. So yeah, that was I tweeted that. I forgot when I tweeted. I think it was like a week ago, but I got a lot of different opinions on that. Look, the NIL is good. I'm all for players, getting paid.
Are you mad, bro? Are you mad you missed out?
Yeah, I am a little salty about it. I'm not gonna lie. I just missed that mark. You got 4th and 5th guys on the bench right now. From what I hear, they're getting 75, 80. I mean, that's you're a kid in college. I mean, you're walking around with 100K, 400K, some millions, and I mean, that's crazy. But
bro, you gotta afford that Hellcat lease payment. I'm just saying.
But the transfer portal, right? I think the culture of college sports is being lost because of the transfer portal. The fans are used to seeing guys at their college at least 2 years, 2 or 3 years. And to see these guys leave after every single year, the fans don't have any players to really gravitate towards. It's just like, okay, yeah, we have this guy for this season, but next season we're going to have a whole nother roster. And it's like, the fans seem like they're resetting every year. Yeah. And I think when you think about college basketball, even just a couple of years ago when that wasn't there, I mean, let's just say Taco, right? UCF fans got to see Taco all 4 years. So he built a big fan base at UCF because we just seen him everywhere. You seen him around campus, seen him at the football games for 4 years. And I think now that you got players leaving, saying, "Hey, the school offered me $500K. I know I have a good situation here, but I got to take the money," which is fine. But I think overall for the culture, it's not. It's not good. It's just not. And you have, let's say, I think I said you can transfer one time max. And I think Marlon Williams from the football team, he came in and commented. He was like, he said he thinks that you should be able to transfer one time max, and the second time you should be able to have to sit out. I agree. I do think every player should get a right to transfer because a coach can leave,
Right.
different stuff. So I can't just say, yeah, you shouldn't have a transfer portal. You
Well, they
definitely
do,
should.
Chance, they do have a trigger for that. Anytime a coach leaves, whether it be football or basketball, they have the ability to transfer.
Yeah, I think it's in any sport, yeah.
Yeah, right away. So that's already covered.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
The biggest – go ahead.
A lot of these guys are transferring. So yeah, if the coach leaves, all right, yeah, cool. But a lot of these guys are transferring just off the strength of just money.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's either money or the coach talked to me wrong. So now, I got a grudge against the coach. I'm out of here. They're not. I don't feel like they're losing the grit to work through problems, in my opinion.
Yes. I think that's the biggest thing right there. What you just said there is because, all of us are varying ages, but Roger and I are a little closer in age than you. You're a little younger than us, Chance. But by the same token,
what are you talking about? I'm his age.
All of us grew up.
I just got that. I just got a little bit of
a
little
more gray in the beard. Same here. But by the same token, all of us grew up in an era where you earned what you got. Like, regardless of how you felt about certain things that other people got besides you, like, you had to earn what you got. And you got recruited hard, but once you came on campus, once you were a part of that team, you had to earn every opportunity in practice or extra workouts, extra shooting, whatever that may be, film sessions, and you had to earn that. And Penny Hardaway you mentioned Penny Hardaway earlier. Like, Penny Hardaway talked about this recently, how it's so difficult nowadays because you can't discipline a player because you're afraid that they're going to leave. And we had a coach that was in the Final Four. We had a coach that was in the Final Four 2 seasons ago, literally resigned today, the middle of the season. Jim Larinaga at Miami, he resigned today because of the topic that we're talking about. This coach coached a Final Four team 2 years ago, and he said 8 days after he won the Final Four, one of the what he cited, this is his words, not mine. He said 8 days after they made it to the Final Four, he had a large number of players in those post-year meetings that that everybody has at this level. Basically say they were going to transfer because they wanted to figure out how much more money they could make. And I think, and I'm fine with you. See, it's funny that you mentioned the rule that you feel like should be implemented, the one transfer, and then you'd have to sit out. It's funny that you mentioned that because that's what the NCAA actually said that the transfer portal rule was going to be about. Like, it literally said you get a one-time transfer. And then if you do that again, you have to sit out like you always did, right? Like you had to sit out like a year. And it's just so funny though, because that the year that they implemented that rule was the year that NCAA lost all authority to dictate or regulate any rules, because it implemented the same year as the NIL came about. And then collectives came shortly after that, and they lost all control to regulate anything that goes on with college athletics. And here we are years later where it's still the wild, wild west. It's even worse. And so here's how I think we could potentially do this without an NCAA enforcement arm that they don't have any authority anymore really to enforce it. In my opinion, the way that this gets resolved is more of a free market approach where these athletes coming into colleges, they can decide, along with the school on the other end of the table, they can decide if they want to sign a 1-year contract, a 2-year contract, a 3-year contract. And if you break that 2-year contract after the first year or 6 months or whatever that may be, if you didn't read everything that's in it and the consequences associated with that, which should be financial as well,
yes,
like
yes.
a buyout.
Yes.
If you didn't read that, then that's your fault, right? Like that's your fault. I feel like we're going more towards that. And as and Roger, you know way more about this. I'm sure you do too, Chance, than I do. The whole rev share and you know what we're going towards, where they're bringing things in house, which it always should have been that way, anyways. You know that all going on. That's happening upcoming. I think that we're going towards that. But honestly, I think that's at least the first step, is to go to a more of a model where there's multi-year contracts involved. And I believe those are already going on now, but we just don't hear much about them because we only focus on the transfers.
Yeah. So a couple things. One, when all this went down, basically the coaches lost all their leverage, right? I don't think Jim Larrañaga, for any reason whatsoever, I don't think he's retiring because of that. I think he's retiring because Miami has lost like 7 out of 9 games or something crazy like that, right? Sure. That's why Jim Larrañaga is retiring, right? Yeah. He may not like what's going on, and it definitely hurt his opportunity, but that's not why Jim is retiring. Now, on a go-forward basis, to your point, with the new rules that are going into effect that haven't been signed off on yet, but everybody's expecting them, including UCF, and Terry Mohajir has talked about this. The expectation is that the rev share is 20% of your media contract with a max cap of, I think it was $20 million. UCF, I looked at the budget recently. We're probably not going to hit $20 million, but we're going to be darn close. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, we're not getting a full media contract buyout just yet. We've got everything going on with the tower and the other upgrades that are going on, et cetera. My biggest thing, and I kind of tend to lean on what Chance says here, is the multi-year contract. The NIL collectives will still exist, but they are supposed to be regulated with regard to how much that particular contract is worth. So instead of saying, hey, you sign a media deal and you show up 3 times all year and you get paid this amount by the collective, it actually has to go through a clearinghouse that's going to be independently audited by Deloitte. So there will be some guardrails in there to say, hey, this contract value is actually what it is. But they will have the rev share that they'll get paid, and it's up to the schools to dictate how they divvy that out, right? The lion's share is going to go to UCF football and UCF men's basketball, 100%. But at the end of the day, I think the contract length, it has to be a 2-year minimum. For no other reason other than the fact that, yes, it sucks for the fans. It also sucks for the fans that COVID did away with the handshake that goes all the way around the inside of the thing after the games. I miss that, by the way. UCF bring that back. COVID's over for the most part. But I think the big thing is we need to get multi-year contracts, and that is starting to happen now that the rev share is happening. The school does take a risk, but it's no longer the boosters taking the risk like they were the previous years. We saw that here with Gus Malzahn and what happened there. But at the end of the day, I think that's the right move. So, going back to kind of about the team, I know we kind of started talking about the roster. Let's talk a little bit about the roster breakdown, but also, what is the concerns going into conference for you guys right now?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good transition to what we're just talking about. Is a guy, and I want to start to talk about a few guys on the roster that we haven't touched on totally here. And And one of those guys, we're talking about people that have transferred every year, or how rare it is. And to have a guy that stuck around for 4 years and a recent graduate from the University of Central Florida is Darius Johnson, right? Like, he's a guy that I tweeted this out recently when they posted about his graduation, which he didn't get to walk across the stage because he was playing in a basketball game that day, which I think is fitting. Which I think is fitting, right? When UCF basketball posted about Darius's graduation from UCF, like I tweeted out how I felt about it. I put it on our group chat before I did, because I just, like, in today's day and age, you just have to appreciate a guy like Darius Johnson. And I'll set aside that his father is part of the coaching staff, because I don't even care at this point. I don't, because it's such an anomaly now for a player to stick around like he has. And let's be honest, like, the fan base, myself included, like, hasn't always been kind to Darius Johnson and everything that he's his growing pains as an athlete and as a leader of this team. Nothing that, I've never questioned his leadership ability, because I think that is elite. I think some of the things that he's cleaned up this year in particular, because I want to talk about his game, is he's cleaned up kind of the silly turnovers that we would see in the past. He's limiting those, and especially the untimely turnovers that we would see in the past. I think he's cleaned that up a bit, because they've been tough in the past. That's for sure. Yeah. And one of the things that he's absolutely just accelerated at this season is his 3-point shooting is just through the roof. I mean, he's averaging 40. His 3-point shooting percentage is 46% right now. That's 6th in the Big 12. He leads the conference in steals per game at 3.1 per game. And so he's kind of getting it done on both ends of the floor. He's a team leader in assists per game, which is he averages nearly 5 assists a game. It's not like super high level numbers. We're not talking about 8, 9, 10 assists a game. But by the same token, his role on this team isn't necessarily to dish for assists all the time. I think his role is to just simply run the offense. And when he sees his opportunity to score, whether that be driving the paint or spotting up for 3, I think he takes that in a way that shows a maturity about him. And so just a little bit about Darius Johnson there as far as statistically, but how have you seen Chance, just his game grow over this season and over the last 4 years here? Because I think he's a great extension of Johnny Dawkins and what he wants to do on the court.
Yeah, I agree. Just going back to when I was at UCF, he used to come to the practices when he was in high school and scrimmage against us. So I really got to see him from start to literally finish.
Yeah.
But from the time I first seen him to now, I mean, like you said, the growth has been crazy. The way I think now he balances the game at a much higher level than he did, when he was a freshman or sophomore. I think he was searching for shots in years past harder than he is now. I think right now he balances out the game much better. I think in the last game, in the first half, he barely scored. And in the second half, he came out and he got his points. But Ivy Curry in the first half was hot. So he took a back seat, which as a point guard, I think that's very important to be able to take a back seat and be able to let your guys, whoever has the hot hand, that's who you let score. Because if you, as a point guard, if you have a guy like that can score at a high clip and he's on, but as a point guard, you're trying to take the shots, that kind of messes up the balance of the game. And then that's how guys come to not trust you as a point guard. 14.7 points per game, 3.8 rebounds, 4.5 assists. I mean, that's a well-balanced point guard right there. And the thing that sticks out to me is the steals. The steals are that's big. Coming into games, the other opposing point guards they're going to know that, okay, I have to protect the ball against this guy. I can't just lollygag up the court and just think I'm going to do anything I want to because he's going to be there ready to steal the ball. So I think I think him defensively has improved a lot too as well because it's hard to get two steals per game. That's hard to do. That's really hard to do to average.
Yeah, and he's averaging 3. It's crazy.
He's at 3 steals.
Yeah, 3 steals a game, 3.1 right now, leading the conference. Yeah, so I mean, he's taking every advantage of any opportunity he gets.
I stand correct. 3 steals. That's
I mean, that's extra possessions for his team that he's just creating on his own. That's a big, big deal.
Yeah, he almost had 6 in one game the other day. 6, or it was like a couple weeks ago, 6 or 7 in one game. So, Chance, you mentioned a lot of things. Ben, you mentioned a lot of things. I think for me, like for when it comes to DJ, the things that I see is one, he finally figured out his shot mechanics for that 3-point shot. When he first started, his 3-point shot was like very shallow. There was no arc to it whatsoever. Then he went the rainbow shot.
Yeah,
and now
this year the opposite for like 2 seasons.
I mean, it was like rafters, like bouncing off the rafters shot. And now he's kind of figured out what his groove is. To your point about facilitating, he's a much better facilitator, but I think he also has less pressure on him because he's only had 2-point scorers and 2 scorers on our offense for basically the 3 or 4 years that he's been here, and he was one of them. So defenses could, focus on him, trap him, whatever. He's much better at getting out of traps as well. He's stepping through his traps, whereas before he would get a little discombobulated when he got into a trap, and that set him up poorly. And he would take over games, and when he really didn't need to. And so you would see him for large stretches of games for the first year, second year that he was playing, where he felt the pressure because the rest of the team wasn't scoring, that he would sit there and take it over. He's using his body. He's leveraging his body to break up the defense when they start clogging the paint up, because he's got a big enough body and enough control of his body as he drives the paint to be able to cause people to foul him when he's driving the basket. And he can take it and can still finish through that contact. And, once you start getting those guys with higher fouls, and that means they can't clog the paint as much, which means you're getting more one-on-one situations. And if you're passing the ball around better and facilitating better, that opens the floor up for everybody else. So I think that's what you're seeing out of DJ as far as his maturity, is just the ability to facilitate, using that ability to take over games in the last 3 to 4 minutes of games, which is where we've really improved. It's not, oh my gosh, we got a 5.8 point lead with 5 minutes left. I'm not as worried as I was 2 years ago every time that happened, or even last year.
Free throw shooting helps with that too. Our free throw shooting has been much improved this year.
Really
good free throw shooters down the stretch.
I mean, they're averaging, I think it's something like 75, 78%. And we were, for the longest, averaging like 50, 60, right? So
as a team, we're 77%, and that's elite as a team.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, I think from DJ's perspective, just the ability to facilitate, to your point, Chance, his defense is a lot better. He knows when to step off the gas and pass the ball around, but I think he's also more comfortable because he's got a lot more scores on this team. And when he needs to take over and drive the paint, he can do that and get to the free throw line. And I think that stabilizes the team. He's got the confidence, and the fact that he doesn't get caught up in traps, and we've got a ball handler that can get out of traps and presses, I think is huge, which for a couple of years there, we were really bad at that. So, when you start playing teams like Press Virginia, that can cause you to have a bad day.
Or Iowa State, man. Iowa
State. Yeah, exactly.
Like, they'll just smother you with that press. I mean, they're ridiculous defensively, but absolutely. I think DJ, his maturity that he's shown on this team, like his growth is it's going to be able to take this backcourt, but the whole team to the next level. And I'd like to even see, which you see it, I'm sure you watch a lot of it being at the games, Chance, but I even see it on TV when I'm not at the games. But like, you see kind of Darius grabbing his teammates in a quick huddle before a free throw or whatever that may be. Like he's making sure that they're focused in. I'll say we talked about slow starts earlier. I'd like to see him even take more of a control when he realizing that they're in a slow start, like earlier than anybody else. I'd like to see him kind of take more of a control, be more aggressive, like we said, getting downhill to avoid some of those slow starts as a team, even stepping up his leadership even more so than what we've seen and admired from him. I'd like to see that even more. But no complaints about DJ this season. I mean, I just think he's brought his game to the next level, and we really need him to do that and be kind of the captain of the ship, if you will. Another guy in the backcourt, we've talked a lot about Jalen Sellers and coming back. Somebody who has been that kind of Batman and Robin with Darius Johnson and his backcourt mate with Jalen being out, of course, is Jordan Ivy Curry. We've talked a little bit about him, but he is our team's leading scorer right now. And so how does he fit in this lineup once Jalen comes back? I personally think that he'll play very well with Jalen Sellers in the lineup. We're not going to take out our leading scorer in the team right now. He's certainly not out of the starting lineup. I mean, he's averaging over 16 points a game. He's contributing in other ways as well. He's shooting 37% from the three-point line, so he's certainly putting the ball in the basket. What I see about him is he's like he's a one-man run sometimes. I mean, he can go on. You talked about the first half of that game the other night, our last out-of-conference game. I mean, he was our offense in the first half. He had 16 points in the first half, if I can recall that correctly. I think he's somebody that, like I said, he's kind of instant offense. He can take over a game on the offensive end himself. I feel like he is a capable and good defensive player within Johnny Dawkins' system. But I feel like Adam Hood's offense that he's kind of implemented this season really plays well. That extra pass that we have, it's always cutting, and then once we get the drive and kick, there's always seems to be making that extra pass, and it winds up in Juice's hands, and he can knock it down. I think his 3-point shooting will allow for Jalen Sellers to really implement himself well into the offense. I don't think Juice Curry's will sacrifice any minutes than what he's getting so far this season once Jalen comes back. And I think that it'll add to potentially one of the I'm going to sound like I'm ridiculously biased when I say this, but I mean, honestly, I think even objectively, one of the most versatile and more interesting backcourts in the Big 12 resides in Orlando when you have Jalen Sellers at full strength. When you got Darius, Jordan Ivy Curry, and you got Jalen Sellers in the same lineup together. That
has to be those three has to be the most dynamic in the Big 12.
I mean, dynamic's a great word for it, right? Chase, I just think it's a great word.
If you're just talking about offensive firepower, I mean, those three, that's the best in the Big 12. There's right. You can't argue that.
I mean, Jamel Shedd's not in the Big 12 anymore, So like they got a great backcourt over there in Houston, and there's other backcourts throughout the Big 12 that are at a high level, but those three guys together, look out. I mean, I just think Juice Curry. I mean, if you guys got anything to say about him, I just think his contributions on the offensive end have been something else this season so far.
I think when Ivy Curry comes, when Sellers comes back, Ivy Curry and Darius Johnson, I can tell you right now, they're not going anywhere. I think the guy who minutes will get hit is Debo Coleman.
Yeah, I would agree.
Coleman will eventually be worked out of the starting lineup, and Sellers will get implemented in there. If you think about it, Sellers came in last game. I think he had 7 points in like 3 or 4 minutes played.
Yeah, it looked like he never left. I
Yeah,
mean, he had the alley-oop for the dunk, and then he had a three later on. Like, he was just looked like he was just in mid-season form, and then he was like, I'm tired.
Yeah. he was like, all right, y'all see what I can do? All right. I'll come back in game when conference comes back. But I do think Debo definitely would be the one to take the hit there. Keyshawn Hall is not going anywhere. He's just too versatile. I think the only person that's the changeup is going to be Debo.
Right.
When Sellers comes back, obviously JJ Taylor was hurt last game. I'm trying to figure out how they're going to work. If Sellers comes back, they just have so much firepower. It's just hard to really put together how Coach Dawkins is going to work with these lineups come conference play.
Yeah, because it's an interesting thing to think about, because we know, as much as we love watching the depth in the non-conference, like, we know that, like,
that's going to shorten.
The non-conference is the non-conference is there, and those matchups are there for, like, Johnny Dawkins put together that schedule for a reason. He put together that schedule to not only get examples at a lower level, but examples of the types of teams in the Big 12 that we're going to see. Because we saw teams that were that had 2 7-footers on the team and had a versatile guard to go along with those 7-footers. And they were a big physical team like Kansas is, but they were a team that had nowhere near the talent or the togetherness that Kansas does, right? Yeah. We saw other teams that were really good offensive rebounding teams that were super versatile, had a lot of guys that were around that 6'6" to 6'8" range that were just kind of athletic and got a lot of offensive rebounding, because that's what Houston does, right? Like, you saw these teams, but they just weren't at the level of the teams in the Big 12, which is to a point. And you could kind of, when you look at the details, why Johnny Dawkins put together that non-conference schedule the way he did. The other reason why you put together that non-conference and you play certain teams, you play a lot of games at home, you don't leave the state of Florida too often, is because you want to see what you have on your roster as well and play a lot of different guys. That's going to be shortened here. So if you've got a favorite player like Debo Coleman, like Chance mentioned, or even JJ Taylor, who's like my son's one of his favorite players right now on this roster. He loves the energy, the athleticism that he brings. There are certain guys in this lineup like DJ, Juice Curry, Keyshawn Hall, Mustafa Thiam, like, they're not going anywhere, right? And they're going to be in the lineup the majority of the time. The rest of the guys are going to be hopefully matchup problems for the teams that we're going to face, but they're going to be their playing time, whether it's going to be 5 minutes or 18 minutes in a game, and that could vary that big of a swing from night to night. It's going to depend on who we're playing and how effective their style of play can be against that opponent. And honestly, I think that'll be fun for us basketball heads, like, watching the games, like, to try to see how that plays out this season and how that strategy plays out for Johnny Dawkins and the guys.
Well, a big part of that is who are the offensive strength guys and who are the defensive strength guys, right? So, like, there's a 3-and-D player in the NBA that's developed, right? That role has developed quite a bit. You know why? Because you need someone who's got defense, even when you're scoring 130 points a game or whatever ridiculous number the NBA has now, right? Mm-hmm. But, at the end of the day, that's where matchups are going to be key. And whether you're talking basketball, whether you're talking about football, or you're talking about any other sport, the key team sports is to get one-on-one matchups that are mismatches, right? And that's the chess match that you'll see in lineups when we play different games. Do we need to outproduce from a scoring perspective? Do we need to is this a scrappy team like Houston typically is defensively, where it's going to be a 60-point game and you can win, like a 68-point, 70-point game, you can win, are they going to be more physical like Cincinnati used to be under Cronin when we were in the AAC? Chance, a little bit about that. Those guys were clotheslining guys on the
Cronin,
court. Yeah. Yeah. They were clotheslining guys like legit I remember our first AAC game against Cincinnati, and 2 or 3 times they were clotheslining guys and the refs were not calling it. It was ridiculous. I mean, literally arm out, like running down the court.
Cincinnati is known for that rough play for sure. 100%.
So, I think that's going to be a big part of it. But then you've got other guys that I think the important part here is when those high scorers have an off night, you've got players like Dior Johnson, or you've got Keyshawn Hall, that can be focal points any given evening. I mean, Keyshawn Hall, 15.2 points a game, 6.5 rebounds per game, 2.3 assists. That guy, he is not only one of the leading scorers, he's also UCF's leading rebounder. So he's a better 3-point shooter than what he's shown this year. And I think that's why his minutes are a little bit lower. But I mean, you're talking guys that you can plug and play and bring in, and they're going to produce like that. This roster is full of them.
Yeah, you could make an argument that Keyshawn Hall is the most important player on our roster. And you can make an argument for that, and at the same time, somebody across the table with me can make an argument that it's Darius Johnson or somebody else. But the versatility that Keyshawn Hall provides to this team is a huge X factor, and he's like a matchup nightmare, I believe, for a lot of teams. And just getting him, plugging him into this versatile lineup that we have, I think has been fantastic. And that's just one example, right? We've got some good things, good pieces to play with. That's for sure. What do you think, Chance?
Yeah, Keyshawn can play 2 through 4.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, honestly, really, I'm not gonna say 1 through 4 because he does have a turnover problem. He does turn the ball over at a pretty high rate, but the rebounds do make up for it. But he can play 2 through 4, no problem, in my opinion. I think with a guy like him, you can kind of build your lineup. So if one night, the other team has a guy that's, a 6'7" 2 guard, well, we got Keyshawn, who can be a 6'7" 2 guard every given day, and he can guard a 6'7" 2 guard.
Right.
If you have a team that's playing more of a small ball type thing, and they have their tallest guy in the lineup is 6'8", well, Keyshawn is. That'll be a matchup problem for that guy because Keyshawn can bring that guy out and bring him on the wing and take him to the basket, no problem. With the move he has a patent spin move. I don't know if you guys really watch what he does. I can't believe teams had not caught on to this yet. He's going to rip you right and spin back to the left every time. He does
exactly what. I'm not comparing the two players, but he does exactly what Cooper Flagg does, really well.
Yes,
that spin move, that rip right, like you said, one dribble, spin left is just he did it in the Texas A&M game down the stretch, and it was a huge bucket. It was a huge bucket.
Man, the way he gets to that's like a signature. That move, man. When it comes to the end of the game, teams have to know that he's going to do that move. They have to be saying right now, when teams lock into film, when they're filming for UCF and they see Keyshawn Hall, if that coach is not saying this guy's going to take you right and spin left, he need to be fired.
Well, I mean that's the film guys, right? Doing the tendencies and everything else, right? The other thing with him is his soft touch. He's got a really nice touch. It's not just he can drive the paint, but he doesn't have to drive the paint.
Right.
So he can shoot, and that's something we were missing last year was that 10 to 12 feet, consistently being able to knock that down. He can do that too if the paint's getting clogged. See,
that's such a good point too, because Keyshawn Hall has really struggled from the 3-point line this season. He's about 25%. And you could tell that he's a little pressing on that part of his game right now. But in the past, last season, for instance, he averaged, 36%. He was a very good 3-point shooter last season. And so obviously it's a step up in competition this year, but by the same token, I feel like that's a part of his game that is coming. But what your point there about the mid-range game that he's portrayed or that he's shown us in the first 11 games of the season, I think it's interesting because he it shows that he kind of lets the game come to him. Like whatever is necessary on the offensive end, he's going to take. And he's not shooting the ball from three very well, but other parts of the game and other parts of the court are working for him. So that mid-range game, he's really shown well. And it's just a good point, because I think that shows his basketball IQ as well. He's not just, forcing things in one aspect of the court or the other. He's trying to figure out how to take advantage of the weaknesses of the defense. And that's great to see from Keyshawn.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed, I don't mean to cut you off, but one thing I noticed, that he causes foul issues with the other team.
Yes.
He gets other teams in foul trouble really quick, because he's a big body that can play like a two guard. And if you're not ready for his moves, like the spin move, the pump fakes he does, I mean, it's hard to guard that guy. And I do notice he's at the line a lot.
Yeah.
So
that big goal that Johnny Dawkins always has, right? That we need to we need to make more free throws than the other team attempts. We have done that in almost all of our games this season so far. And if we can continue that type of trend, we need to make more free throws than the other team attempts, which basically just means get to the line a lot, be aggressive, make your free throws, of course, but play solid defense on the other end without fouling. And if we can accomplish that in most games in conference play, we're going to be in most games in conference play. I'm not saying we're going to win a lot of them, but we're going to be in most games in conference play. That's for sure.
Yeah, and for me, it's assist to turnover ratio, right? So that's also
going to be super important.
That's the biggest stat for me when I look at and evaluate any team, is assist to turnover. If you're moving the ball well and finding better shots, you're going to make more shots, right? And if you make more shots, you're going to score more points. And if you're not turning over the ball, you're not giving the opportunity to the opposition to be able to keep up with you. They may go on a few runs, but consistently you're going to outscore them. So if you can do that and you can drive the paint consistently and make your free throw shots, you've got not only a chance to be in a lot of games, but to win a lot of games and against some really, really good competition. The other guy I kind of wanted to talk about that we haven't really talked about much, and he was out the last couple of games with a cold respiratory kind of thing, was JJ Taylor.
Right.
Now, JJ Taylor, for those, and it's crazy that we're talking about all these players, right? I don't think UCF fans realize these guys were all top, I think it was like 4 out of the guys that transferred here were top 100 guys, including JJ Taylor. He was a 96 composite nationally, number 86 player in the entire country, and the number 20, the 20th best forward in the country. And so he went to Memphis. You remember back in the day, Ben, this predates you, Chance, but when we were in Conference USA and when we were in the AAC, it was always like Penny eventually, but Memphis was the basketball brand. Temple was too, but Memphis was the basketball brand, right? So it was like we had our Keith Clanton moments, but Memphis always got the big ballers. They had the ability to spend. They got the 4 stars.
Yeah, the Fred Smith money, over there.
Yeah, and then Penny came in, right, and he started grabbing these guys. But now some of these guys were JJ Taylor was recruited by Kentucky, had a legit committable offer from Kentucky. This kid is really, really good, and he's getting bench minutes from here, role player minutes, right? And he's gone on some tears and on some runs on his own, where he's had a few games where he's really turned the lights on. And so this can be a really, really scary team offensively. And it's just amazing. I mean, even Benny Williams, he was a top 100 player when he went to Syracuse. He was a borderline 4-star player as well. It's littered with it. So I think all in all, what's impressive to me about this team is that you've got legitimately a quote unquote power 5 or power. I know it's in basketball, it's power 6 or now power 7, but like a power 3, right? Blue blood type of roster that you've brought in here. I mean, all these brands, these guys are coming from Memphis, they're coming from Syracuse, they're coming from, all these different places. You legitimately have a blue blood roster at UCF for the first time. And it's going to be really scary because they can mix and match where the scoring's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, those three guys that we had just spent some time talking about, Debo Coleman, J.J. Taylor, and Benny Williams, right? Like, when we get into conference play and the lineups start to shorten up, the rotations start to shorten up, all three of those guys may not have a moment in every game, but one of those three guys is going to have a moment in every game. Like, in every game, there's no doubt in my mind that one of those three guys is going to contribute. At least one of those three guys is going to contribute in a big way, in a big moment in each of these games. And because I think all three of them are similar in one way. In one way in particular, is that they bring a ton of energy to the game. Like, they play with a high motor. They're always trying to be around the ball. They're trying to be in the right spot, and they're attacking at all times. And so that's an interesting thing about those three guys. Obviously, of those three guys, Debo has started all 11 games, so it's going to be interesting to see how his role is.
It's going to diminish.
Altered. But by the same token, a guy like Benny Williams has played a lot of minutes as well, 18 minutes a game or so. And so it'll be interesting to see how those three guys work into the rotation. But by the same token, I think that each of them from one game to the next is going to have moments where they really contribute to the success of this team. And I'm here for it. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah. So, as we kind of think about, okay, we've talked about this roster ad nauseum, right?
Sure.
Let's start to kind of think about Big 12 conference play, right? So
yeah,
I'll ask you this one question to everybody, and I kind of want to get your opinion. What is the biggest hole on this team? Like, what would be the thing that would stop them from reaching their potential?
I'll let you go first, Chance.
Well, I got two things off the top of my head. I would say, slow starts is the one that we talked about earlier. I think that's big, just because in the Big 12 you have to set a statement in the first 3 or 4 minutes. You have to set a tone immediately and fast. And the next thing is egos. How will the egos fare with Sellers coming back in the lineup? How will they handle adversity? All these things, I think it's going to be more mental than anything. They have the talent, but I think it'll be more mental than anything. I think these guys, when they find themselves down, because it's going to happen, they're going to be down. Some games 10, maybe 12, maybe 15 points sometimes. How would they respond to being down? Will they break down? Will they start arguing with each other? All these are question marks. They haven't really been tested on the road, like Ben was saying earlier. We have no true road games. I mean, you can say we went to play against LSU, but that's not a road game. LSU didn't. It's not like LSU had their crowd behind them.
Right.
It's a neutral site. So we haven't seen this team against any really good teams at their place. So there's really a lot of question marks when it comes to how they fare on the road. But yeah, the biggest thing for me is egos. How are they fare with that? What was the other one I said? I'm drawing a blank. Egos.
Slow starts, of course. Yeah.
Egos, slow starts, and how would they respond to playing on the road? I think playing on the road is going to be the biggest one because they haven't done it yet. They have not won on the road to play against.
And outside of the Texas game last year, we did struggle on the road a lot last season. Yes. That was one of our bugaboos last season. So I agree with you there. I think your 3-1s were really good. I will say, just to add two more to that, I'll say guarding the 3-point line is going to be really important in conference, especially against a good 3-point shooting team. There are numerous teams that can certainly put up the three. So that's been something that we've talked a lot about on this podcast, Roger, like about some of the times where we don't guard the 3-point line very well. And this has been something that, in my opinion, has been throughout, no matter what roster we had, has been a little bit of an issue with.
Oh, hold on. Ben, 1 second. I need Chance to show his shoulder there again for a second.
Oh no!
Go ahead, bro. Let's see that night head.
Yeah, man.
Hey,
There it
that.
is.
Here we
There
go.
it is.
Yeah.
I caught a
Literally
glimpse. I was
planted
like, hold
himself.
on.
That guy's a UCF night for life right there. He's showing everybody.
Yeah,
Love
we ain't
it.
faking it. We ain't faking it over here for sure.
No faking
Hey,
here.
Ben's got a tramp stamp of Nitro on his back, so I'm just saying that was his era.
Yeah, right.
That was his era.
No, and I'll say man, if I can remember the second thing that I was going to say after all that, is we got to keep the opposing teams off the offensive glass. We got to box out. That's something that even in the Taco days with Chad Brown, Taco Fall, we have never been a very good team at boxing out. And that's not a huge knock on UCF, because who boxes out well nowadays? You certainly don't see it very well, but there are teams that in this conference, in particular Houston and Iowa State, but there's other teams in this conference that just hammer the offensive boards. Like they're making their hay on second chance opportunities. And if we can limit the second chance opportunities and take care of the basketball, which we've already talked about, like I feel like we're going to be in any game against any opponent in this conference, but we can't give them 2 or 3 possessions. And we've even seen it in the non-conference against lesser opponents where they got 4, even like 3, even 4 or 5 extra shots on a possession, which is like, you can't give a good team that. Like, you just can't. Like, and so, keeping them off the offensive glass, I think, in this conference is going to be extremely important to our success.
Yeah, and I think, you guys, honestly, there's not much I can add to that.
Right.
I think we're doing a good job of keeping the turnovers down, which was huge. Last year, we had a lot more turnovers. So I think that's a strength. So again, I'm going to say assist to turnover ratio, that's my big thing. And we're moving the ball a lot better. The big thing that I think that is different about this team, we've traditionally had a lot of length on our team, right? We've had very, very tall forwards, 6'10", 6'11" guys, and then we've had a big in the middle to plug up the middle. We don't have that on this team. What we need, when you see guys like Debo from the guard position being the 3rd leading rebounder on this team, we need to make sure that this team, no matter what position you're playing, is following the ball, going for rebounds. Now, obviously, you've got to have somebody back in case there's a fast break, right, for fast break defense, but everybody else has got to be crashing the boards. And that, I think, has been the biggest miss thus far, has been that. I think, when it comes to offense, it's creating offense and making sure you're taking the extra pass so you aren't getting bad shots. You're going to run into good defenses, whether they're zones, whether they're man defenses, and you're going to get different types of zones. You're going to get traps. You're going to get presses. You're going to get all kinds of different things, right? But making the extra pass, being able to continue to have movement within your offense is going to be the key for us to be able to score, because we have guys that can slash, and we found, some of the passes this year, no look passes, like behind the back passes, having those guys slashing in the back of the basket and coming across the middle of the court. I think that offensively is going to be important, because we do have 3-point shooters. But we've got to be able, no matter what defense they throw at us, we got to be able to break that up and get a one-on-one or an open look. And I think that's going to be the key for us in Big 12 basketball, is being able to find an open look, whether it's through movement or through passing, and following the shot. Because Our offensive rebounding has got to get better. We've got a good defense. We're going to create turnovers. We're going to be able to get out on fast breaks and run. And everything I just talked about was what Houston does really, really well. So if you want to, with the size that we have guys that are between 6'7", 6'8". They can play combo guard. They can play, whatever. We have Houston, but with a better big in the middle. We've just got to be able to follow that that blueprint to be able to be successful in the Big 12. And you can, because we've seen it happen year in and year out for Houston, and we've got the scores to do it.
Yeah, and I think we can be the UCF version of that, right? Like we don't have to be exactly like them, but I agree we can play to our strengths and still bring some of that tenacity that Houston is so well known for. So let's
Johnny Dawkins is just not going to strip like Kevin Sampson. I mean, I know you guys hear me talk about this all the time. Kelvin Sampson is like half naked by the time we get to the first 7 minutes.
Johnny Dawkins looks like he's in a little bit better shape than Kelvin Sampson.
Well, yeah, but Johnny Dawkins, you know what's funny? What's funny to me that I see about Johnny
looks like he could play a full court game tomorrow with no problem. I mean,
it's funny with Johnny because he'll get after the refs when we're not in a bad situation, but when we're in a bad situation or playing poorly, he'll sit down. It's interesting to me. I don't know if you can provide any insight into this, Chance. Is that something that Johnny does to exude confidence in his team to say, hey, look, I'm calm. You guys are going to be good. I trust you. Or where does that come from Johnny Dawkins? What do you read off of that? Because it drives me nuts. I want him up and yelling and doing everything else.
Roger and I are always arguing about this. I love Johnny Dawkins' demeanor on the sidelines, and Roger is like, "Why doesn't he get more fired up?" I'm like, he doesn't need to.
Yeah, he's a chill guy, you know. He's a chill guy, not playing. but yeah, So one thing I noticed about Coach Dawkins, and the reason why he's so chill is because he knows. He really knows the game, and he knows how to get his point across without screaming at a guy, throwing his clipboard down.
Right.
All he wants to do is he's bigger on settling the team down than to, him being this big personality like a what was his name? Phil Knight. What was the crazy guy? They used to throw
that
chairs
was definitely
and stuff
Phil
like
Knight. Curse and everything else.
No, Bobby Knight.
Yeah, Phil Knight.
Yeah. So polar opposites from him, but from my experience, he does most of his getting onto players when they get in that huddle. A lot of times you can't really see it. He isn't going to be out loud about it. But he does, once you get in that huddle, when he calls a timeout, things not going well, he does harp. If you're a guy that's not doing what you're supposed to, he will look at you and tell you, hey, what the fuck are you? But
whoa, we're E for everyone. What's going on here? We're live. But the children, man, it's like 11:17 on Christmas break. They're watching.
I got a little carried away, but
it's all good, man.
Yeah, he does. He does get on the players. His style is just he knows what he's doing. He's gonna get his point across, and he's gonna make sure what he gives off isn't gonna rub off to the players, because he feels like if he's being up in arms, if he's getting rattled, he sees yelling and stuff like that as being rattled. I mean, he just wants to stay calm, show his players that, hey, we're good, relax. If I'm not panicking, you guys shouldn't be panicking.
Right.
If I'm not mad, you guys should be on the court arguing with each other. I feel like he gives off what his players what he wants his players to do on the court, which is stay calm, keep the demeanor, level-headed, and just pretty much stay together when the adversity comes. So he's definitely not the type that's going to throw any chairs or slam any clipboards or anything like that.
Yeah, where I also see those moments of those intense moments between him and another player is when he takes somebody out of the game because they missed a defensive assignment, or they had a silly turnover, or they weren't doing what they needed to do on the court. And like before that player gets to the bench, like Johnny will meet him. He'll meet him at that halfway point where he's standing. And if the camera ever cuts to them, or if you're at the game and you're watching it, like he'll have some intense conversations with that player.
He will. He will for sure.
There's no doubt.
See, to me, like Johnny's like the dad you don't want to disappoint. He just gives you the look and say, "I'm disappointed in you, son." That's like what I feel like with Johnny Dawkins, right?
Yeah, and BW Knight here in this comment makes a really good point.
BW Knight.
I said BW Knight.
Oh, I thought you said DW. My bad.
No, I said BW Knight. Yeah. So are the assistants more wild or intense than Dawkins? And I think that there are certain assistants that really play that role well on the team. Even like you'll see Adam Hood on the sidelines this season, like, you know, very, very high level intensity, especially when he's trying to make sure an offensive set is implemented at a certain time. But you'll see his assistants be a lot more animated and intense on the sideline than Johnny does. And I think that's by design. I think that's by personality in some cases. And it's the way that it needs to run. So I definitely would agree with that. And so,
bro, I want to get back, coach. I want just one time. I want Johnny like fired up, like somebody holding him back. Like I just want to see that out of Johnny Dawkins.
Yeah.
Like you know, when your grandpa
authentic.
Well, when your grandpa said to go get you the switch off the tree because you know you're getting one, and you finally like put it over the edge. That's what I want to see out of Johnny Dawkins.
Coach,
but one thing he does, and it gets mistaken that he's a calm guy on the sideline. It gets mistaken because he's like that. It gets mistaken as he's not as competitive as some of these other fiery. And Johnny Dawkins is a extremely competitive guy, and so like. That needs to be like, don't get that twisted. Like just because he's a calm on the sideline doesn't mean that he doesn't want to, to win more than anyone else. So,
I think his most animated assistant was Kevin Norris.
Kevin Norris, that was the name I was trying to think of, and you're absolutely right. Kevin Norris definitely played that role well.
He jawed the refs.
Think of his name.
When they were in timeouts, he was jawing the refs the entire time. If you watch when they cut to the huddle, Johnny's in the middle. He's got his little clipboard. He's having his conversation, right? Kevin Norris is off the sideline like that to the refs.
Coach Norris, forgive me, man. He definitely played that role the last few seasons. I don't think he's with us this year. I think he moved on to another school, but
he's at Maryland. Look at it.
He's at Maryland. That's right. I knew he got a good promotion for him. So that's cool. But
he's a DMV guy anyway.
The epitome of that was
Kevin Norris is a DMV guy anyway, and I think that's one thing Johnny brings. Because DMV is known for good basketball, and that's something that he brings. So let's talk a little bit about the Big 12 schedule.
That's right. I was trying to transition to that. Absolutely. So
we're transitioning, folks.
I'm trying my best to be the host. But absolutely. So obviously we got an intense Big 12 schedule. Just overall, we got 20 games in conference this year with the Big 12. That's the first year that we're having that amount of games in conference. And it's going to be a gauntlet. We know that's the 100th time I've used that word this season, talking about UCF basketball, and I'll use it at least 100 or 200 more. But the thing about that I want to focus on tonight, because to try to go over every single team in this conference would be another 2 hours of the podcast, and we'll do that another time. But to kind of give us an idea of what we're dealing with here is there is no easing into this conference slate whatsoever. So I'm just going to run down the first 7 games in conference, and I could go beyond that because after these first 7 games, we've got top 25 opponents right away and all that. But I'm just going to focus on these first 7 games, Chance. So at Texas Tech, so that's our conference opener. As we've talked about, first road game of the season. They're number 17 in the net. Then we go. Then we have the rematch that everybody's anticipating, and they're anticipating even more so than probably we are, is number 7 Kansas coming back to Edition Financial Arena on January 5th. And that game's at home. They're number 7 in the country on the AP poll. They're number 12 in the net. Obviously, we know who Kansas is. January 8th, we have Colorado at home. They were a tournament team in the Sweet 16 last year. They're number 77 in the net, but that doesn't really show, just like UCF, that doesn't really show how versatile and how good of a team they are. And then turn right around. So this is within a week. January 5th, January 8th, January 11th. January 11th, we go to Arizona. At Arizona, one of the true blue bloods in all of college basketball. They're 6-5 this season, by the way, but they're still 26 in the net because all 5 of their losses have either been close or but all 5 of them for sure have been quad 1 games. So they're not playing, the type of schedule where they would slip much in the national spotlight, because they're playing against really tough teams in the out of conference, and
they have what you call in college basketball a quality loss.
Quality loss, yeah, that's right.
And the SEC, I mean,
and so they're a dangerous team. Listen, they're a dangerous team, and it's at the end of the day, I don't care what their record is. We're going to their place, and it's Arizona. All right, so. And then we stay in Arizona, January 14th at Arizona State. They're number 50 in the net. They're no slouch. Their record, Arizona State's record, is 9-2 as well, same as us. And then we come back 4 days later, come back from our 5 or 6 day trip in Arizona. We come back 4 days later, January 18th, to play who? The number 15 team in the country right now, Houston, at home. They're number 6 in the net.
This is a tough January, man. This is
and you know what's great about that, Chance, is 3 days after that, we play arguably the best team in the country, number 3 Iowa State at home. They're number 8 in the net, but I honestly feel I've watched a couple of Iowa State games, and they're about as legit as you get. And so that's our first 7 games. And I could go on. I could talk about after that we played TCU at home. Excuse me, I apologize. We don't play Iowa State at home. It's at Iowa State. We have to go there and try to win a basketball game. So that's going to be fun. I could talk about coming back home and playing TCU, and then immediately turning around and going to Lawrence, Kansas to play Kansas at their place.
Allen Fieldhouse ain't no joke.
Yeah, Allen Fieldhouse is no joke. And then we get to start off February with against BYU, who has a top 3 NBA draft pick next year. So that'll be fun too. So anyways, I don't want to go beyond the 7 games here. I just talk about that stretch, Chance, and just as an example of how this conference is insane.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the space between these games, they don't have much. So one thing they're gonna have to do is be in that training room, getting a lot of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna have to watch a lot of film. I'm talking about. I mean, I've never seen this. I mean, I've been watching college basketball a long time. Has January normally been that many games in the stretch of 2 weeks?
I mean, I don't know if it's because we're playing 20 conference games that they're just jamming them all in, but yeah, that's a lot of games in January, right? I mean, and that's not even all the games in January. The last game is that we got 2 more games, TCU and at Kansas. So we got
this.
So Chance, talk about that too, like what kind of toll all of that travel takes. I know I hate it when I travel for work. I travel quite a bit, and if I go on a 2-month stretch where like I'm going I may be in Gainesville, I may be in Auburn, I may be in, I may be in Sandy, Utah, and Salt Lake City area, all within the span of like a month and a half. I'm beat, and I'm not playing basketball games. You know what I mean? So talk about that a little bit.
So I know, in the American, most of the schools are right here on the East, going up the East Coast. The majority of the schools were on the East Coast. You had the Houstons and schools like that were a little more off the grid. But with the Big 12 and how Big 12 is so spread out across the country, it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back from these games. Because if you talk about going from let me see here, from Orlando all the way to Arizona playing against Arizona Wildcats. They get to stay in Arizona, which is good, and go play against Arizona State, but they have to come way back to Orlando and play 4 days later against a team like Houston, and then go back up to Iowa.
That's the part.
You're not getting good sleep and rest. You know what I mean? You're traveling. That's the big thing is the sleep. People say, oh, well, it's only a plane ride away. Yeah. Back in the day, bus rides were longer. Yeah, I get it. But
another thing is the elements too. Because you're going from Florida to Arizona. Both places are hot, but over there in the West Coast,
dry climate.
It's a little more dry climate. And then you go from Orlando to Iowa, where you go into where it might be a snowstorm.
Mm-hmm.
The elements, being on the plane for all those hours. All the film that you have to constantly be watching in January, they're going to be watching. The coaching staff. We talk about the players. The coaching staff is going to be busy.
Mm-hmm.
The coaching staff. Because they're normally watching film 2 or 3 games ahead. So I don't know how they I don't know how they're gonna find time to really lock in on these scouting reports and get rest, because we weren't traveling like this. We were going to USF.
Right.
Hey, we don't say that around here. It's the cows.
East Carolina. That was traveling, but that's nothing like this. This is like NBA traveling.
Yeah.
This is like more of like an NBA.
But y'all also didn't get charter flights.
I was about to say, luckily they're going to be traveling a little bit different style than we were. At least I was.
Yeah, we were like, we did travel charter. We did travel charter. I think I came in. I think like Johnny's second year was when they started implementing the charters, but we weren't flying charters every game. It was like kind of like half and half almost.
Yeah. This is where the charter flights are going to be really important on these games.
Very, very important, because if they have the commercial flights every game, that would be tough.
So not to put y'all on the spot, but and this is a way we can kind of wrap up this first, let's call it third of the conference slate here. What do you think? And this is going to be tough to answer, but this is BW Knight's comment here, his question. But how many games do we have to win in this first 7 for you to feel that we are dancing this year? Or let me say this: what do you think our realistic expectations are for this stretch? Because this is no joke, as we just talked about.
Man, let me go back to the schedule here. All right. How many games in the first 7?
First 7. Looking at that stretch.
If we're able to get, first off, I would say 3. If we just 3.
3, right?
Okay, and the reason I say 3 is because Kansas is will be a top 10 win. At Arizona, that would be considered a quad 2.
Sure.
Maybe
that'd be a quad 1 win, and Arizona State would even be a quad 1 win, because they're top 50 in the net right now.
Yeah, so if we get I mean, if we get at least 3, if we can get at least 3 against some of those main teams, I mean, that's we already have one quad 1 win.
Yeah.
We already have one. So if we can get 3 more, that's 4 quad 1 wins. I don't know. I forgot how it works, but I think 4 quad 1 wins is.
Oh yeah, you're looking real good at that point. If
Yeah,
you
you
get
look at
4 with that far into the conference slate, because you still got 13 games left at that point.
right, and then you still got the conference tournament where anything can happen. I mean, so
right, anything can happen. So that'd be a resume building win if we can get 3 of them. What do you think, Roger?
Well, my thing is, I think we're front loaded on the schedule. We're talking about the first 7, right? And
Yes.
now, granted, any year, any one of these basketball teams can get hot, right? So let's. But football proved that extends to basketball even more so because of the quality of this conference. But to me, the goal is 500.
Yes.
Stay as close to 500 as we possibly can. With the 9-2 record, yes, we missed out on the LSU opportunity, which would have been a quad 2 win, possibly quad 1 by the end of the season. Most of these games are not going to hurt our net. It's more about volume, right? Yeah. So as many as we can pull in, for us, I don't even think we need to win 3 out of the first 7, but I do think the goal should be 3, right? Because we want, if we're front loaded as we think we are, this is where our legs are the freshest. These are quad 1 opportunities. We grab as many of these as we possibly can. Obviously, you want to win every game, but they need to be locked in right now for these games. And I think that 3 should be the goal, because 3 quad 1 wins, like you said, 4 quad 1 wins are going to be great. And then the rest of it's going to be volume on the back half of the schedule, because we need to get to 500. So 3 should be the goal. 2, I would even be okay with 2, to be honest with you. If we get 2 more quad 1 wins, that's the biggest opportunity here, is to get the quad 1 resume builders at the front end of it. It's not going to hurt us on our net very much long term, or when the committee looks at this towards the end of the season, right? This is a 7-8 bid win, 7-8 bid league. It's not like when we were in the American where it was 1, maybe a 2. So I think we get 2, we're okay. 3, which should be the goal. Anything above that's great. Gravy.
Yeah, so I'll agree with you there, Roger. I think if we get 2 of these wins, and we're competitive, we like we get 2 of the, so 2 and 5 down the stretch, right? Like in the stretch, which numbers wise, we're like, I don't know if I love that, but I think if we get 2 wins, we're competitive in almost all of the games, right? Like we don't show that we don't belong, right? Like we show that we deserve to be in these games, or we have earned our right to be there. I think we're starting to feel okay about a 2 and 5 stretch to start conference play. Personally, I think we're capable of getting as many as 4 in this stretch. I think that I'm saying that with the caveat of this first game at Texas Tech is extremely important for us to start off the conference right. And I feel like, having not seen a ton of Texas Tech basketball, I have seen a little bit of it this season. And knowing that their big-time player started out the season, just their leading scorer, their leading everything guy, a guy named JT Toppin, who's a forward, kind of a versatile player, a little bit like Keyshawn Hall. But the guy that has stepped in for them is a guy named Darian Williams, who is doing the same thing, a real versatile guy. I feel like we match up pretty well with them because their backcourt isn't as strong as ours, and we have the defensive capability to handle some versatile forwards in those 2 guys, one of which is coming back from an injury. I think we have enough to go into Lubbock and come home with a victory, and if we can do that, I think we start to see what this team is made of. I think we're off. We set a foundation for ourselves that is hopefully a jumping off point, similar to what the Texas A&M win was to start off the season. If we can win at Texas Tech, by the way, a team that lost to Texas A&M recently, I feel like that changes my outlook on this 7-game stretch from winning 2 games and hopefully competitive in all 7 to winning 3 or 4 games in this stretch and taking teams to the wire in all of them.
The nice thing is the season.
Too much on it, but that one really is kind of circled for me.
The nice thing is the season's not over, and
my God, that's the greatest thing about it, right?
Yeah, unlike in past years, you lose a couple of games in conference in the AAC, and you're pretty much out of it. And there goes the tournament, right? Best you can do is NIT.
Yeah, think about that 2018, 2019 seasons where we got our first at-large bid ever, but it came down to the last game in the conference against top 25 Cincinnati at that point. And by the way, they were number 25 in the country at that point, and beating them sealed it. But it's like you could potentially seal it with like 10 games into the conference this year, depending on where those wins come from. And I agree with you, Roger. I think the goal should be 10, right? That's the 10. 500 in conference. That if we're 19-12 going into the Big 12 conference tournament, like at worst, we're a bubble team. At best, we're already in. Like going into the conference tournament, we're already in. And so 19-12 going into the conference going into the conference tournament, that makes the goal of 10-10 in conference, which would be a feat. And I think it's definitely possible from what we've seen with this team. I think just the addition of Jalen, and how we're going to match up well with these teams that we're going to play night in and night out is going to be dictating what this team is going to be about come February and March. And what I said at the end of last season, what I've said at the very beginning of this season still holds true. What are my goals for this year? My goals for this year is to be playing meaningful basketball in late February. And in mid to late February is to make those games at the end of the season matter from the February 11th, February 15th, Iowa State at home, at Colorado. Those games matter because we have a chance to be a team that is going to get another at-large bid in the NCAA tournament because we are in an elite league, elite basketball league, and we are performing well. So I don't have a number right now tonight overall. I think the goal should be 10. I'm not saying my expectations are necessarily 10, but my goal for this season is to play meaningful basketball come mid-February.
And we're saying all this having been picked 11th in this conference.
That's right. And so far, statistically, performing at about that level. Like right now in the net, we are essentially 14th out of the 16 teams. But we know that the net has a lot to do with strength of schedule. And I agree with what you said at the very beginning of the show, Chance. We don't kind of flub a fluke triple overtime loss to LSU in a neutral site. Like it could be as much as a 30-point swing in the net, right? Like we could be from 81 to 51 without any issue from anybody. I mean, 10-1 makes with that win,
huge difference.
A huge difference between 9-2 and 10-1 with that win on our resume. So it doesn't matter at this point because we took care of business. We do have a quad 1 win. And now we're about to go into an absolute, like every night is an opportunity to get that. Like every night.
This team has already done better because unlike last year or previous teams, we didn't drop that fluky loss to somebody.
Bingo. We didn't lose to the Stetsons of the world. We didn't lose to the teams that surprised us that we should have won, right? Like you're right. That is a great point, Roger. Like we've already done better because of that. We didn't lose to a team that we should have 100% beat. We got 2 losses, but both of them are the top 2 tiers.
I must
Quality
say,
losses.
I must say, big shout out to Donnie though.
I didn't mean to say Stetson, but it is true. He came back and showed us why he still has some chops left. Yeah, I know that that was an interesting night. It's the truth though. We should have won that game, and he had the better game plan that night.
Yeah,
and they played better. But hey. But yeah, so guys, I think that's absolutely what we have to look forward to. I mean, every single night in this conference is going to be a huge opportunity to get a big resume building win towards March. And I know that I speak for all of us when I'm super looking forward to it. So just to kind of wrap up the show here, guys, I really appreciate the time. Really, I think we had some great conversation. I appreciate all the comments and feedback that we had in the chat. Sorry if we didn't get to I believe we got to almost every question as far as in our roundabout way through our conversation. And so anything you guys would like to say as we move forward into this conference slate here and looking forward to this season in the Big 12 conference?
Chance?
Appreciate you guys for having me on, man. Hopefully I can be on here more often. Great conversation, great insight on the season coming up. I'm excited to see what's to happen. Like I said, you got a loaded Big 12 conference. It's wide open. I think a lot of teams will surprise people coming out of the Big 12 conference. I think we're gonna send at least five plus teams to the tournament. So
more like 7 to 8, I think.
I think 7 and 8 is a real possibility. 8 or 9.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad you guys had me on. Talking hoops once again, and hopefully I can be back on. If anybody's watching or will see this, I do sell roofs, so if you need a new roof, I do work with 3MG Roofing. That's a proud sponsor of UCF, so holler at me.
All right, that sounds good.
So I think this is the comment of the night, just purely for my own edification here. You three should run this B-ball show regularly. Great analysis and on-air chemistry. So I say that not just because I want to pat myself on the back, but thank you for that. But also I just want to say, Chance, thank you for coming on and doing this with you. We had you on last year as well. You know, we want this to be a more regular thing. I think that now that in the Big 12 conference, we've kind of found our footing. I think that more basketball talk as we lean into the season is important. I got two great guys on here that know their stuff, have played for black and gold, and, you know, obviously bring a lot of experience to the table. So I appreciate both of you doing this, and Ben, for you taking this on. I asked you to do this with Chance, and you've done a great job. Also, everybody listening, watching, whatever, I see the numbers on here. So there's a lot of people that stuck for the full 2 hours. So we really appreciate the fact that you listen to us talk for that long. And we hope to do it some more. And listen, I'm excited for this basketball season. I'm excited because we have a competitive team. When we were going into the Big 12, we didn't know if we were going to, you know, there's a lot of talk about how much money this program has and how we stack up with the rest of it. But Johnny Dawkins did a great job last year, surprised me. And my expectations are higher, obviously, this season. I think we've got a good roster. I think we're going to play a lot of exciting basketball. And we have defense. We have free throws. And that means a lot of wins. And if we can do that, I think this is going to be a real fun season for Knights fans. And I hope you join us along that journey. That's what I've got for this evening. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and I think I agree. We're definitely gonna do this more often, Chance. This has been a lot of fun tonight, and we're gonna replicate this throughout this season because it's gonna be great. And appreciate all the people who stuck with us the whole 2 hours here, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm really looking forward to this UCF basketball slate here in the Big 12 conference. I think we're going to – last year we surprised a few people. I think this year, having done that, we're going to follow it up in an even bigger way. And we've got the roster and the versatility to do it as long as we stay healthy and continue to grow. I think we're going to really take that next step that we need to in the big time college basketball that is the Big 12. So really looking forward to it. Appreciate both of you guys. And appreciate everybody watching and everybody that will watch. And with that being said, go Knights.
Charge on, baby.